Hi everyone, welcome back to the Eussen interview series, Health Life Design, here with Cassandra York from Design Curtains. Welcome back, Cassandra.
Thank you for having me.
You are a resident in this series, which is wonderful because you have so many topics to contribute, and it's wonderful to have you back again. And
thank you.
Of course, today we're talking about building and architecture and interior design, and where the hell do we start with this process? But Design Curtains, very quick rundown about who Design Curtains are.
Design Curtains has been operating for many a decade. It focuses on bespoke soft furnishings design and manufacture, but we also do interior design, interior decorating. And we also have our trade division, of which we work for a lot of high-end designers to assist them in their larger scale projects. So that we can look after the soft furnishings side.
Yeah. Now you come very well versed. You're a qualified interior designer, but one of the topics that we tend to get asked about is when we're building a house, whether we're renovating or big renovation or we're starting from scratch, is when we engage the various services. And I guess ultimately what we want to do is obviously save as much money as we can in the process, but come out with the best possible result. So if I'm engaging an architect, obviously we need the builder, then the interior designer. In your opinion, what service is the first that we engage?
All three.
All three at once?
All three.
Well, you've totally confused because I would never have thought of that. That's why we're talking about it.
Yes.
All three. Why all three? I mean, we don't do that though, do we?
But no, and particularly I think, there is so much information out there. So effectively we can all educate ourselves on anything on the internet. We can research. So I think homeowners in particular, if you're looking at the architect, the builder and the interior designer, most people want to do their research first in context of saving money, to make sure they can find trustworthy, reputable people who may have referrals, but somehow of engaging to know that those are people that they can trust. So naturally, they may start with a builder to try and get an idea of cost, but then also they might be able to, if their budget allows, implement the architect to get the overall essence of the building. But those step by steps, and then go to the interior designer, because it's assumed that that's the last part.
Do you know what, I can't help but while you're saying this, I'm thinking of Christmas Day with the relatives you don't want to be around. I mean, do all these services get on?
Well, okay, and that is actually a very, very important point. It comes down to people's behaviour, a topic we touched earlier today. Yes. People can be defensive, and it's just not necessary. So I think in context of your Christmas Day analogy...
Not mine, by the way.
No, but it is important to gather those around the table that can play well with others.
Well, if you've got the formula of Christmas Day, I think that is an entire another topic.
But it does matter that you have people, not only they're very good at actioning their skill set in the areas of architecture, interior design and building, but have a good nature about themselves, and also have a more harmonious sense of being, that they can get along with others and they can respect the opinion of others. And I think that's probably quite key.
Yeah.
And effectively, without all of us rushing out and getting a psychology degree, to be able to then determine whether somebody has good emotional intellect or not.
And it is about psychological behaviour, isn't it?
It is. At the end of the day, we are humans, and it's obviously a key element to our being. So you do have to have people involved that are actually... They have a good emotional sensibility. They're not irrational.
Look, with from an architectural point of view, they have the creative license. They pull the design together. Then the builder, the ones I've spoken to, have the very realistic license. Okay, they got to put the creative into the build.
Yes.
So sometimes there is a disconnect with those two services. Often there isn't. How do you overcome that?
Mitigating arrogance is key. So you need to make sure that people are on a plane of reality. Because there is always a budget. Even if it's a very high-end budget, there is still always a budget. And it needs to be controlled. And good design and good design thinking does come when there are constraints of limitations. Imagine if we have no limitations, it is actually known that humans are almost paralysed by decision when there are no limits to decision making. There must be some limitations. So budget is a natural limitation, and it's good to get an idea as to what you're comfortable to spend. Have an idea. Know that that may vary based on the interests of the designs that come forward. Because effectively, when you engage anyone creative, you're not going to know what the result of outcome will be, essentially, other than what you already desire in the initial instance.
Yeah.
So
we've got the harmony between the builder and the architect, and clearly that they need to be engaged around the initial time that we're making those decisions.
Yeah.
With an interior designer, where does that role fit in? At that stage or
definitely
later?
at the beginning.
As well?
Definitely at the beginning, because and I have an example of disaster where we've seen another designer experience because it's not necessarily the designer's problem when these faults occur. It can be the builder, it can be the architect. There's all these channels of project management. So if you've got builder, architect, designer, they're all running those different project management elements of their own businesses. So it is up to the client to be quite assertive to say, I select these three, but I need you to work together and I need you to be cohesive. So to start at that meeting, the client needs to determine what outcome they desire to the best of their abilities, what it is that they'd like to desire. There's functionalities that come first, but there are aesthetics, there are moods and feels, how they'd like the space to flow. They will, because research is there to be obtained, most clients will have an understanding of what they want to achieve. The architect and the designer allow them to refine in a design context how to achieve those outcomes.
Yes.
But having the builder, the architect and the designer together allows you to define in the initial meeting who is accountable for what element of the project.
Right, so it's accountability and responsibility.
Accountability and responsibility.
Cassandra, what about electrical? There's, I've seen this happen firsthand in that the question is, when do you engage the electrical components to the home? In that I've seen it done at the initial stages of the build, yet the right choice of furniture hadn't actually been picked out, and so therefore the bedside tables were in a different position because the configuration of the bed didn't suit, but the electrics are already there. So
Yes.
where do you compromise, and when does that plan come into play?
So initially I would say for the client is to have patience, because engaging all services takes time for that communication level to occur. So when you have all three, the builder, the architect, the designer, it is known what trades are going to be required for the final outcome that is built. So when it comes to electrical, and it can be based on positioning of furniture, which comes to the interior designer, it can also be based particularly on the operation of even window furnishings. So there is a lot of there's a lot of automation options for residential and commercial properties. So
In window furnishings, you mean?
in window furnishings, but across the entire home.
Right.
There's a lot of automated, and you can use your smartphone now to automate your home even when you're not there. So pending what level of investment that you want, all these discussions need to be nutted out in the beginning so that each person, party, trade knows what the scope of their works is. And I think to save money overall, being very clear about what that scope of works is at the beginning.
Yes.
Things may alter, things may change. Things will occur, be prepared for change of those decisions, but the intent needs to be defined. There's a lot of logistical outcomes that can't be foreseen. At that stage, the builder may start to excavate and then find things that weren't expected, etc., and take further time. So when it comes to electricity, for example, you've got your window furnishings. So architecturally, they're important as well as design, because they're an insulator for energy. So most people are wanting, if they're commencing a project from the start or knocking down and rebuilding, most people want to have a positive impact on the environment. So energy efficiency will become part of the conversation.
Which is so topical these days, and it is something that everybody does consider.
Yeah. So window furnishings are very much an element of that. And to get a little technical on that, the builder and the architect need to define the construction to accommodate what is required of housing, electrical units, etc., what is needed. So the builder can then consult to the trades, or the architect to the trades, or the designer to the trade, pending what the design is.
Yeah.
But everybody's on point with what is required prior to the construction. Because, for example, you know, curtaining is still very popular. High ceilings are very popular. And it provides a sense of sanctuary. It provides a sense of naturally heat and cool insulation for energy purposes. But it also provides a sense of, you know, nurture as well. So, for example, you want you want volume of fabric, but you want it to be very streamlined. So you want to create in the ceiling space, and however many levels the house may have according to the land profile, you want to actually have space within the ceiling cavities to accommodate whatever kind of lighting, whether it be, if it's going to be recessed, for example. But then you also need to account for having an alcove that, you know, the ceiling across an alcove like this, and then the glazing. It could be
so many
floor to
things to
ceiling
think about.
glazing.
This is why we're having this topic.
That's right. So even what people may feel, curtains, soft furnishings, window coverings, last minute detail, no, it's a first part, like part of the design. It is an architectural component, because the architect is going to be deciding which literal window frames, windows, products, etc., because that's going to serve what their accountability is and responsibility is. But in terms of the interior and what fabrics and what design of the curtains and fullness and so forth is going to be, we may select a fabric that's very thick and it's purposeful for a certain aesthetic functional reason, but it may have, we might want to do 2.5 fullness, and that's going to have a particular projection. And then you might want a particular blind operation to automate. So it's important that you don't have fabrics rubbing against fabrics in the operation, because it will just render it faulty at some point.
So you mentioned that we engage all services at once.
Yep, definitely.
That doesn't mean we have
Initially.
everybody in the one room, does it? I mean, it just means that you are working with each of them.
I would recommend, I mean, it might be relevant to meet with each independently to define who you are comfortable with. Some architects might work with particular designers, some designers might work with particular architects and builders. But essentially, to get the parameters, if to be effective with cost, to get those parameters set initially is to have those 3 people or those 3 entities in that room for that initial meeting to define. And I mean, obviously now it can be done via Zoom, etc. You don't have to be in the same space, but you want the communication to be clear. So getting all that communication clear up front is going to save the client a lot of money. And here's an example of miscommunication. And ultimately, when that occurs, who pays the bill? Is it the client? Is it the designer? Is it the architect? Is it the builder? Who pays the cost? So imagine if you've had a beautiful marble that is one-off selected from a quarry, and you've positioned that on the floor. Sometimes it goes on the ceilings, and in some instances it might go in profile of the window structure as well. But for example, marble or tile, anything like that, it's a cut once, drill once scenario.
We don't want mistakes.
Not at all. So one, you have to have trades that are equipped professionally to deal with certain materials. But for example, you might want to do a certain like horizontal tracking panel design across a window, and that requires certain tracking allocated. So you want to make sure, it sounds simple, it should be a no-brainer to get the right componentry, the tracking componentry correct, so that the builder has the correct trade to channel into that marble the required size. Now, what happens when that channel arrives and the channel's too small? You know, or worse, it all gets done and the channel goes in, and that's not appropriate to that particular panel blind system.
So with design curtains, you have the manufacturing side where you're working with other interior designers as well. Do you often go on site with these meetings with the architects, the builders? So you're actually practicing that?
We do, definitely. So we do work with a lot of designers, because particularly with soft furnishings, it's a very specialised component of the design process in itself. So the fabric can amount to a great deal of cost. So you want to make sure that that's calibrated correctly, but it's also ordered correctly, managed correctly, that there's all the relationships with the fabric suppliers, that if there are problems, you know, flaws, etc., things can happen. But effectively, the manufacturing is done in our own workroom. So it allows us to control the process, not only for time, because architects and other designers can be very specific about timelines, and particularly that comes from clients needing completion
Isn't
at
it
certain
wonderful
times.
to hear that manufacturing is done here in Sydney?
Yes.
It's done here in Australia.
Yep.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
great. I mean, we're now trying to
Yeah.
encourage manufacturing here, but
definitely.
it's not as easy as that, because you have to set up
No.
your manufacturing plant, but you've been doing that forever.
We have,
Yeah.
for decades, definitely. And it's good because we can not only control the process time-wise, but we can control the process as far as quality goes as well. So we can manufacture any design that exists, but we also design our own designs as well, because pending what's needed, you know, different things, different changes and adjustments might be required. So we're very flexible for that as well. So
Fantastic.
the workroom is a great
Yeah.
part.
Well, there you have the answer, folks. You get all services at once, and you will also have a harmonious Christmas Day. That's the answer, isn't it?
So long as everybody's well behaved.
How do people contact you?
We have our website, designcurtains.com.au. And we also have, through the website, basically, you'll have all the numbers of, you know, to make contact with us. We also have info@designcurtains.com.au as well for email. But jump onto the website for Design Curtains, and that'll give everything.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for your amazing insight. Would you please thank Cassandra York from Design Curtains?
Cheers. Thank you.